have just confirmed that a mistrial has been declared in the case of Freddie Gray, the case against William Porter's police officer, one of several police officers accused of shooting and killing Freddie Gray. Our affiliate WJZ has just confirmed that the jury was hung.
Yeah, they struggled to come up with a verdict. We've been watching this over the last day or so, and the judge ordered them yesterday after they said that they couldn't come with a verdict. They sent them back into that jury room, and now the news coming out of Baltimore, which is this officer, William Porter, who was arrested for his alleged role in the death of Freddie Gray back in Baltimore. Now the jury coming back, they are deadlocked, and that means a mistrial in that case. We're going to continue to follow this story. We want to try to get our justice reporter, Paula Reed, on the phone to talk to us about this. We're trying to get some more details on exactly what happened here, but this is pretty shocking, and this is not, and you know, sometimes in the media we have to make sure that our viewers understand this, that, you know, although the allegations in the death of Freddie Gray on the surface seem very, very striking, when it comes down to the legalities and when it comes down to a case, a trial by jury, that sometimes is going to have a very different outcome than what you're seeing, what we saw on the streets of Baltimore as people erupted into protests over some of the video that showed these officers dragging Freddie Gray into their vehicle. Freddie Gray was not strapped into that wagon, that van that they transported him in. He suffered spinal injuries and later died, and so that is what we're dealing with right now. The jury is deadlocked. They are unable to come up with a verdict in the trial of William Porter.
And we did see when this incident occurred, you know, the streets of Baltimore erupting in protests, violent protests. There was looting. The area has been calm during this trial, but of course we don't know what reaction might be now. We want to go live now to WJZ, where they are covering this live.
Message to the judge. And we were trying to find out what that message contained. People gathered in the courtroom, including Marilyn Mosby was there. So there were strong indications that something major was about to be announced. And indeed, it appears this jury has not been able to come to a unanimous verdict on any of the 4 charges.
That's right. They came back yesterday in the afternoon and said that they were deadlocked and they couldn't reach a verdict. Again, there are 4 counts. Let's go over some of those accounts. But first, we're going to go to Mike Halgren, who has the very latest for us from just outside the courthouse. Mike, catch your breath and tell us what happened.
It only took a few minutes. The judge held a bench conference. Then he brought the jurors in. He said he received a note indicating that they cannot come to a unanimous verdict. He then thanked them for their service. He ordered everyone to remain in the courtroom while the jurors left. There was another bench conference, and then everybody just ran out of there. Ms. Mosby was in the courtroom. Family and friends of Porter and of Mr. Gray were in the courtroom, so we knew something huge was going to happen. We thought there might be a verdict. Perhaps we thought that they would read them an Allen charge where the judge would say, well, you can't come to a unanimous verdict, but please be reminded that this is, you know, your service requires you to try your best to do so. The judge did not do that. He just said, you can't come up with a verdict? Okay, you're a hung jury. This is a mistrial. That's it. So basically, that's what happened in the courtroom. These hung juries happen in only about 6% of cases nationwide, according to the last study that I was able to find. And obviously, it was a complex case with a lot on the line. The jurors knew about the gravity of this situation, and they gave it their best shot as far as we can tell. I mean, they spent all morning long deliberating without a note, without any indication that there was any trouble. They did ask for some transcripts of witness testimony. The judge denied that. And then they came back with this other note that they were hopelessly hung on this case. So it was about 3:30 or so, 3:40, and it took a little bit more than a half hour to get everyone in the courtroom. Now, Officer Porter faced 4 charges: misconduct in office, reckless endangerment, assault, and manslaughter. The jurors were unable to come to a decision on any of those charges at all, so there wasn't even a partial verdict. total mistrial in this case. This is bad news for the prosecution, obviously, because this case was also a linchpin for the other 5 cases involved, and Officer Porter was expected to possibly testify in the case of Officer Caesar Goodson, the van driver. His trial is scheduled to begin January 6th. Now that won't happen, so we don't know how that necessarily will impact prosecutors' case against Officer Goodson, but obviously it is not good news for them. Now, prosecutors could, if they want, retry this case. They have to decide what the benefits are. They have to decide whether it's just too much to put the city through this again, whether they could win again. It's hard to say where the jurors were. We don't know what the count was of the 12 jurors, like how many wanted to convict him and how many wanted to acquit him. If the lawyers get that information, if prosecutors get that information, that could be the basis for retrying Officer William Porter. But again, at this point, as far as we know, there has been no decision made on that. All we know is that this is a hung jury, a mistrial in this case after 2 weeks of testimony and deliberations that started on Monday afternoon, ran through all of yesterday, and went today starting at 8:30 with a small lunch break up until 3:30 this afternoon.
Mike, if I can interrupt you, one second, Mike. This is Denise. Can you tell me what the atmosphere was in the courtroom when this announcement was made, when the judge said this? And could you see Officer Porter and his reaction?
He seemed pleased from what I could see. His mother was 2 rows over from me. She had a very faint smile on her face. The jurors were stone-faced from what I could tell. I mean, there were no smiles on their faces. They really, as far as I could tell, showed no emotion. I mean, obviously, this isn't a total victory for Officer Porter because he could still face these charges if the prosecution decides to retry him again. But I can tell you, Denise, it was so tense in that courtroom. And, I mean, that's something that you see in these huge cases with Mayor Dixon's case, for instance, the last really big case we had like this in Baltimore. We also felt that tension in the courtroom, just waiting to see, is this going to be a verdict? What's going to happen? There were victims advocates. I honestly did not see Freddie Gray's mother. She may have been in the courtroom. I did not see her. I noticed Ms. Mosby was sitting in the far right part of the courtroom. She had conferred with one of the main prosecutors, Michael Schatzow, just before the first bench conference when all the attorneys went up, spoke to the judge, and then the judge made that announcement that this is a mistrial. Vic.
Mike, this is Vic over at the City Hall. The atmosphere around the courthouse, as I was up there just a little while ago, I noticed there was a handful of protesters around, heavy police presence, lots of media. That clearly is the case even now, I would imagine. And tell us a little bit more about what's going on around the courtroom and the court building right now.
Sure. Well, sheriff's deputies have been prepared for this moment, and we've seen a ramped up presence at the courthouse here today. I was one of the first people to run out of the courthouse, and I encountered Kwame Rose, who's an activist. He's been involved in several protests at City Hall, and he asked me what happened. I'm like, it's a mistrial. Some of the deputies asked me what happened. I'm like, it's a mistrial. So I was actually telling some of them what had happened inside the courthouse. They were getting their first word here, and as I look behind me here, I see protesters gathered at Lexington and Calvert, just about a block from where I'm standing. They are chanting. I can't tell. It appears that they're starting to move up to my corner here at Calvert and Fayette Street. They're holding signs, Justice for Freddie Gray. There are probably just as many, if not more, members of the media here outside the courthouse as there are demonstrators. Okay, the demonstrators are starting to move here up Calvert Street, but honestly, there really aren't that many of them, and the sheriff's deputies here have been prepared for something like this. I mean, they were so strict even in the courtroom where we could not leave until the jury left. Presumably, the jury is being escorted out privately in a van, as they have been in the past, as the alternates were escorted out through the back of the courthouse. They've been taking strong measures to make sure that the jurors and the alternates, before they were dismissed, that they were safe and secure in this. We'll see if any of them might want to talk. Who knows? In this case, it's such a sensitive case. The judge did thank them for their service. Again, as I look behind me, I see a large banner. There is an artist from New York City who came, and he had put up a huge banner that talks about police violence. There are signs talking about Black Lives Matter and justice for Freddie Gray, but a fairly small protest here outside the courthouse, and pundits are also giving their 2 cents on what's going on as well in front there.
Okay, Mike, let's set the scene once again now. We know that there has been a mistrial. It appears that the jury was hung up on all of the counts based upon information that we're getting from inside the courtroom, unable to come to a decision whether William Porter would be guilty of any of the charges at all. Of course, the judge has been trying to move this case along pretty quickly. He had promised that this case would be over by tomorrow, and of course, now it definitely is. We remember now that it was about 7 months ago that everyone was really surprised that these officers were going to be charged in this case. 6 police officers charged in this case, and in the death of Freddie Gray. And of course, we've seen a lot of developments since that time. Let's go back to Mike right now. And you have Warren Brown there with you to tell us more about his insight into this case, as he's been here most of the time. Mike?
Well, Warren Brown did not represent this officer, but he's, of course, a noted defense attorney in town and has watched much of the proceedings, including the closing arguments. And I'm curious your take on this. Are you surprised that this ends in a mistrial?
No, I've been predicting this from the first time I looked at the composition of the jury. I felt strongly that there was going to be an absence of unanimity on any of the counts. I think what you're going to find is that the jurors are broken down into 2 camps. One that is emotionally and viscerally reviewing this case. That is, this man died in police custody. That's all they need to know. He wasn't seatbelted in. That's enough for them. The Porter's guilty. And then you've got another group in the jury who probably juxtaposed the evidence, compared the evidence with the judge's instructions as to the law, and concluded that Porter did not possess this callous disregard, this reckless and wanton disregard for human life. And I think that's where the rub was. I think, when you are emotionally involved in decision making, logic tends to be set aside. When you logically look at this, I think it was clear to most people that the state had failed to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt.
So what does this mean for the other 5 cases, particularly Officer Goodson, who's next to go on trial?
Yeah, well, the question will be whether or not the state decides to retry Porter, and if they do, whether they push all the other cases back and Porter takes Goodson's trial spot, which I think is in a couple of weeks, or whether or not they decide they gave it their best shot at Porter, give him immunity from prosecution, and use him in Goodson's case that is next up. But I'm telling you something, I think they're going to be faced with the same type of situation in each one of these cases. I think they're going to have a jury that's going to be a composite of the community, which means that you're going to have those that are going to be pro-state, and you're going to have those that are going to be pro-defense. And I think you're going to have a number of hung juries as you go along.
So the Judge Williams, has been adamant about keeping the trial in Baltimore and about not sequestering jurors. Do you think that's a smart thing first, to keep the trials in Baltimore? Do you think they can ever get a verdict here in the city?
You know what? No. The case needs to be moved out of Baltimore. We've got helicopters. I feel like I'm in Vietnam or something. You've got armored carriers that are stationed in in the various locales around the city. All of this is known. You've got children receiving letters that they need to comport to a certain way, notwithstanding the verdict. The whole city is on edge about this thing, and so it's difficult to expect a juror to weather all of that and divorce that from their reasoning when they deliberate and render a verdict. And so it needs to be moved to a jurisdiction that is not so attached to this case, so that both the state and the defense, quite frankly, are more likely than not to receive a fair trial.
Bottom line, is this a win for Officer William Porter?
Yes, no doubt about it. Listen, when we go into these trials, what we don't want to hear is guilty. We would love to hear not guilty, but at least not hear guilty. This is a hung jury. It deprives the state of a conviction. If they decide to try Porter again, then Porter only needs one juror next time to hang the jury, because I doubt that they would try him a third time. So where he needed to conclude this matter definitively with 12 jurors saying not guilty, next time he only needs one juror to hold out in his favor to cause a hung jury, another hung jury, and the state is not likely to retry this a third time.
You know, I'll ask you one last question. I mean, do you think that there's anything that could have been done to avoid the outcome that we had today? Do you think that Judge Williams should have allowed them to deliberate even longer and given them an Allen charge and said, go back there, deliberate more, we'll see where we are in the morning?
No. In fact, the note that the judge received yesterday wasn't, this is the first note, wasn't simply that we're deadlocked, it was we're hopelessly deadlocked. That's usually the note you get, the second or third note that the jury sends out indicating we can't come to any unanimous decision. We're hopelessly deadlocked. That was the very first note that they received. So I didn't see that there was going to be any movement towards unanimity based on their first contact with the court being we are hopelessly deadlocked. The only way, quite frankly, to have brought this to a conclusion, definitive conclusion, is if the defendant had opted for a court trial where the judge would have had to decide one way or the other, guilty or not guilty. Because as long as you have jurors in Baltimore City reviewing this case, sitting in judgment, being the trier of fact, I think it's prone for a hung jury over and over again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warren Brown, noted defense attorney in Baltimore. And Mr. Brown has been involved in a number of high-profile cases like this. Let's not forget that also Judge Williams is experienced on the bench. So